This is On Target Institute, building men of character, men who will live a life that demands an explanation. And now, founder and president, Vince D'Acchioli.
Well, hello, men. Welcome to OTI Leadership Training Session 4. We're talking in this session about the 4 pillars of leadership. And I am really excited to unpack these for you guys. If you remember in our last session, we dealt with on-target facilitation. This is very important. We talked about the 4 competing issues that you're going to face as you try to facilitate group discussions around your table. And by the way, as a reminder, if you would like to download the grading system that we've developed to help you understand how good a job you're doing at facilitation, you can go to our website at otm.co. You can download the training manual and all of the things that we're dealing with here and have notes in front of you, but you can also download that resource to help you with your on-target facilitation and encourage your men to evaluate the kind of job that you're doing around your tables. This and the next 2 sessions, we're going to be dealing with some practical training on what we call, again, the 4 pillars of leadership. Now, guys, here's a fact. You are a leader, whether you choose to be or want to be or not. We're all leaders. I talk to a lot of dads and a lot of parents, and they're wanting to be good role models for their children. And I tell them, look, you're a role model whether you want to be or not. You're a role model whether you're a good parent or a bad parent, because those young people are going to emulate you as they grow up. I've heard sports figures say, hey, don't look at me as a role model. And I just laugh. How can you not look at figures like that, public figures, and take something from them? So it's very important for us to remember that we're leaving an impression when we are leading in any capacity. We're leaving an impression, and as a parent, as a dad or a mom, you're automatically the leader, and your children are watching you. In this case, the guys around your table are going to be watching you. They watch your body language, they watch everything you say, they listen to everything you say, and you are leading them whether it's good or bad. And this is something that we really need to remember. Here's a quote. All of the great leaders have had one characteristic in common. It was their willingness to confront unequivocally the major anxiety of their people in their time. This and not much else is the essence of leadership, says John Kenneth Galbraith. Here's another quote. The art of leadership consists in consolidating the attention of the people against a single adversary and taking care that nothing will split up that attention. The leader of genius must have the ability to make different opponents appear as if they belong to one category. This leader, unfortunately, was Adolf Hitler. So you can see that leaders can be good and they can be very bad. They can be good or bad based upon some ideas that seem to work across both platforms. So we need to be very careful about what kind of leader we are. And that's why the first pillar is so important. Before I get to that, though, I want to just talk for a moment about Jesus. Jesus was probably the greatest leader of all time. And when you think about his life, what comes to me is, you know, Jesus was not in back pushing people. Some leaders tend to do that. They push people forward. Nor was he in front pulling them. That's another inclination by some, to be in front just dragging people along. No, Jesus was with them. They were together, and he was the example they wanted to follow him because Jesus had character. And that is our first pillar, character. The best index to a person's character is A, how he treats people who can't do him any good, and B, how he treats people who can't fight back. Abigail Van Buren said that. Let's look at Romans. In Romans 5, 3-5, talks about character. It says, not only so, but we also rejoice in our sufferings, because we know that, listen guys, suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not disappoint because God has poured out his love into our hearts by the Holy Spirit whom he has given us. Let me go back to that for just a minute. Not only so, but we also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance, character. I remember some time back, someone said to me that sometimes your gifts can take you places where your character can't sustain you. And I remember teaching at an event many, many years ago. When I was all done, I had thought that I hit a home run. And, you know, everything that I do back in those days I thought was a home run. But there was one young man in my audience who came up to me after my session, and he said something very curious to me. He said, "Vince, you've never really been broken, have you?" And I remember when he said that, I really took offense. I mean, I was really shattered. And I thought to myself, how do I respond to this guy? Why would he say that? He doesn't really even know me. But this young man was able to see through the camouflage that I had put in front of me. And what he was saying is that I haven't allowed the suffering in my life or the brokenness in my life to really produce the kind of character that I need to be the kind of leader God is calling me to be. He was able to see some of that, and it offended me, but at the same time I walked away thinking, what is going on here? You know, it's been said that you teach what you know, but you really reproduce who you are. And so that brings up some key questions for us, guys. I mean, are you consistent in your dealings with those around you? Or do you suffer from what I call moral schizophrenia? Moral schizophrenia is truth learned on Sunday that's not applied on Monday. For whatever reason, I'm not able to be the real deal. I'm a hypocrite. There's a powerful illustration I want to share with you. This illustration came to me many, many years ago when I was in the business world by a man named Stephen Covey. He was using an iceberg to kind of illustrate what happens in an organization. He would say the tip of the iceberg is what we see of the organization, but the base of the iceberg, underneath the water, unseen, is really the substance. It begins with at the base, our mission or vision, which informs the core values or operating principles of the organization. And if the organization is doing the right job, it is behaving consistently with those core values or operating principles. And character can be applied to an organization, it can be applied to a church, and it can be applied to a person. And in this case, we're talking about applying character to a person. We're talking about godly character, which is necessary in this case. It's been said, godly character is a one-to-one relationship between my Bible, my beliefs, and my behavior. So, if we revisit the illustration and look at it as a person, as you or me, here I am. My Bible is the foundation upon which my life is being built. It's the basis upon which everything should flow in my life. It informs my beliefs or my core values, and if I'm consistent and not struggling with moral schizophrenia, then my behavior is lined up with my beliefs and my core values. But here's what happens, guys. The moral schizophrenia comes when we chip off the top of the iceberg and we float it off on the newest fad or technique. We're entertaining things at work in dirty stories and jokes and behavior that is not consistent, because if I don't do that, I won't be cool. And that's where we get into trouble. We've got to be lined up and we've got to be consistent. And the only way that can happen, guys, the only way I can have godly character is I've got that kind of relationship with God, and He is living vitally and vibrantly in me every single day. Let me close with this illustration. I heard a story many years ago, back in the 40s and 50s, before TV came along. There was a baseball player who was in the last innings of a World Series baseball game. I believe it was the final game, and they were ahead by 2 runs. They didn't have relief pitchers back in those days, and this was being broadcast over radio, but it was said that this pitcher was in the very last inning, and there was 1 out. There were 2 men on base, and he was pitching to a man, and all of a sudden he stopped and he called the catcher out to the mound. No one knew what was happening. The catcher ended up coming out to the mound. They called out the manager. The manager came out. He took the ball from the man, and they brought in a pitcher to close out the game. The pitcher who came in closed out the game, and now the game was over, and they did win the game. And they asked the manager what had happened. And the manager said, "I've never seen anything like it." That man had the opportunity to finish off that game and have his teammates jump on him and celebrate winning the World Series But he called me out and he said, Coach, I've got a problem. I've got a pain in my elbow. And he said, listen, Coach, I know myself well enough to know. I know my body well enough to know that if I continue on, I am putting our team at great risk. Because one bad pitch, that guy hits a home run and we lose this game. And I'm not willing to do that. I need to take myself out. Whoa. Listen, guys, that's godly character. And men, we are only as good in leadership as our weakest link. If the kind of character we need in On Target Institute is a man who will say, you know what, Vince, I'm not ready right now to be able to be in leadership. I'm not ready right now to be able to really step up to the plate. I know me well enough to know that that inconsistency in my life will take me out. I need to take myself out and wait until I'm prepared to be the man of godly character that God's calling me to be. That's important for us to remember, guys. Now listen, I'm really excited about our next session where we'll deal with the next pillar. Until then, I want to tell you guys, I'm praying for you and I'm excited. And until then, just be blessed.